My example that I know of, just because when I was there, I met Mayor Francis and I looked at the issue there. They have an issue of flooding, a growing issue of flooding. And we looked it up, didn't we? They spend, what is it they expect to spend?
Let me have a look. It's in Miami, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I not say Miami?
You just said Mayor Francis, but I know who he is.
It was like 3.8 or 4.3
it was like $4 billion.
Over what period?
I think it was by 2060.
Okay. 2060. Okay. Anyway.
So yeah, the first thing is if sea levels rose fast enough, that would be a big problem for a substantially coastal civilization and also poorer people near the coast. So we can talk about that number in a minute. But it's really all about what is the rate of that. So in the movie An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore talks about 20, ice sheets melting and a 20-foot rise in sea levels, which in the movie is implied like that's going to happen soon. So
does he say that's going to happen?
I forget the exact words, but it's definitely implied that it's imminent. It's not implied that it's over thousands of years, which is the actual science about it, or the actual scientific projections about it. So we can look at it.
Can we see that?
In the movie?
No. Well, like you're saying it's 1,000 years.
Yeah, it's I have the references in the book if you want to see those. And the most aggressive ones are still hundreds of years, like many hundreds of years. So what I'm saying is what I would be afraid of, and this goes to what I'd be afraid of, like multi-feet per decade would be a very dramatic disruption. Now, it's not an apocalypse. It's important. It's not an apocalypse, but it is a very dramatic disruption. And you would be really concerned, and people would have to make a lot of changes in their plans. And if you could avert that cheaply, which I'm saying you couldn't, even if it was happening, like you would really want to. But the thing is, but we also know at the same time that smaller changes in sea level are very easy to deal with, relatively speaking, because we already have 100 million people who live below high tide sea level. So human beings are very good at living even below sea level. The Netherlands was dealing with being below sea level even in pre-industrial times. It's nothing resembling like an apocalypse. It could be so there's a difference between a disruption and a catastrophe and an apocalypse.
And has anyone done the work to say, look, a one foot sea level rise would impact this many millions of people globally on coast?
Well, but the thing is, there has been work, but what's interesting is when that work factors in people's adaptation. So there's this one study that I talk about in the book, and I learned about from Bjorn Lomborg, and you heard this claim about 187 million refugees under a certain scenario. But then if you look at the paper, they say that would only happen if it rose X amount and nobody adapted, but it said explicitly people will adapt, so you should never say this. And of course, the media said 187 million refugees, and they promoted that idea.
Yeah, I would ignore that. What I would want to know is, per foot rise, how many people does it affect, and what is the cost to mitigate that, and who's paying for it?
So over time, to jump to my conclusion, like the extreme projections are on the order of 2, maximum 3 feet by the year 2100. And that is a very small cost.
Danny's going to look that up.
Yeah, so that I showed that in I can share the graph later if you want. If you just look up, it's in the IPCC reports. Climate feedback, which is a kind of I view as catastrophist group, but it's just a UN chart, and what they'll show is here's what we project by 2100, and then there's one version of it. There's like one super extreme version that has all these contingencies that I think might be 4.5 feet, but the main extreme one in a very extreme scenario is 3 feet. And so my view is that is not a catastrophe at all. And they said even if we aggressively get rid of fossil fuels, it'll still rise 18 inches.
I mean, it's a catastrophe for you if you live on the coast and you can't afford to mitigate.
But I don't know what it means you, because you have cities and you have groups of people who are incentivized to do. But we know that relatively that the Netherlands has been good at this even when they were fairly poor.
Here we go. Current and future emissions matter. About 2 feet level sea rise along the US coastline is increasingly likely between 2020 and 2100 because of emissions today. Failing to curb emissions could cause an additional 1.5 to 5 feet for a total of between 3.5 to 7.
Yeah, I don't know where 7 feet comes from. It doesn't come from.
Where's this from, Danny?
But is the issue of this not down to like coastal erosion as well, rather than just sea level rise, like the issue of flooding?
Oh, well, this brings up Miami. So the issue with sea level is that most sea level issues even with the warming we've had so far, are local issues, not global issues. So why does everyone focus on Miami? Because there are certain local issues in Miami that people focus on. Other places, sea levels are actually going down. So there are different local.
Where are sea levels going down?
I can look it up in the book if you want, but it's there's charts. It's in moral case as well.
How though? If sea levels are net going up, how does it go down?
Because you can have like building. So you have this with some of the land masses that people like certain atolls, like in the Maldives and stuff. You can have accretion of things that prop up. You can actually these islands can get bigger because things can build up under. I mean, these things they're not like just fixed in height. They can go up and they can go down on their own.
I'm not buying this one. Sorry, what?
But this is just a
no. It doesn't make sense to me. Like you might be right, but you're telling me an island can go up.
It doesn't make sense that like coral and other things could get together and that the island could rise.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Like it just sounds. It sounds odd.
No, but this is a lot of how these things form.
No, I've never heard about this. This is like new information.
Okay, it's important that so sea level changes are hugely a local phenomenon, up and down. So one thing that will make the relative sea level go up is if you have more land, if you have more buildings, right? Because you can build things and the land can go down, and it's a non-trivial phenomenon. So you can also have pockets. This is really weird, but you can have pockets of water, like even though it's a global thing and it's sort of equal, it's not exactly like a perfect bathtub. You can have relatively higher and lower pockets. And what this means is that people
But if the net sea level is going up, are you saying at the same time it's going down in other places?
No, a global sea level rise will mean that on average the sea level goes up that much, but certain places will still have the sea level will fall.
But is it the sea level falling or is it the islands rising?
Well, but the sea level is an experience.
Yeah.
So the global sea level is an overall volume of water.
I need to see this one.
Okay, well, hold on. If you just give me 1 second, I'm
you
going
look
to
it
show
up?
you. I'm going to show it to you right here.
I'm struggling to find it.
I would need a source on that one.
Yeah.
That one sounds odd.
Luckily, we got sources for everything here.
There's your sources and there's our sources.
Well, these are, fortunately, all my sources are primary sources where I use mainstream. You want to see it?
Yep, pass it over. Right, I'm just looking at the book. So where am I looking here?
So look at that graph with multiple different sea levels.
Yeah, so Alaska, it's going down. Louisiana, it's going up. New York, it's going up. Stockholm, it's going down. Helsinki, it's going down. I mean, the most extreme one's Alaska.
This is generally true. Most climate-related phenomena are primarily local, which means it's another reason why you need more energy.
What's the time scale on this?
Just see what it is at the beginning. It's pretty.
No, but
I've
got the centimeters on the y-axis. I've got no time scale on the x-axis.
Well, I can see it, but it's pretty recent because they're using tidal gauges. I
So
believe.
since 1950, sea levels off Alaska's coast have declined as much as 32 inches. Scientists know this because the sea level is measured every 6 minutes with equipment. That's so odd. Interesting.
It's important.
Do we know why? Why is the sea level dropped in?
I think here you go, that first paragraph.
As land rises. Okay.
Yeah.
Although ice melt from Alaska contributes to global sea level rise, sea levels near Alaska have been decreasing because the land beneath the state is rising. Despite this, the state could see rising water in the future as sea levels will eventually rise faster than the land. Okay, so this is to do with this is relativity. Okay, so there's a certain level of the rise in the land is outcompeting the rise
there's
in the
local
water.
variation and global variation.
Yeah.
So local variation so far is dramatically bigger than global variation.
Yeah, but I think this would be an example of what I would call would be cherry picking.
No.
Because I would want to know then on a global basis how much land is you've got to look at like how much land is rising, how much is falling.
Right.
Because that's one example, but how many examples? That might be just like one rare example.
Yeah. I just want to be clear. So to even make your point stronger, there will be certain places where sea level is naturally rising, like Miami. It's already rising, and then it's compounded by the warming. So it'll rise. But so what they think, and I think Suarez has been wrong about this, he's been taught to think that it's all the global thing, whereas it's significantly the local things, and then it's compounded by the global. But that means even if you dealt with the global, which I would argue is catastrophic to try to reduce right now, you still have the local. So it's wrong to attribute it's wrong to attribute a substantially local phenomenon exclusively to global. But absolutely, that's why I said I would be
the global
concerned.
picture. We've got to look at the global picture.
Yeah, but
is
I would
global. Is it for the majority of the people? Is it rising? Because
Of course.
if it is, bringing out an argument like Alaska to me is cherry picking.
But I didn't bring it. But
well, you did. It's in your book.
Well, but I think I brought it up in exactly what it is. I was explaining the phenomenon that when you're looking at the challenges that people face from sea level or have faced, they're mostly local challenges, which is why mastery ability is so important.
But what I'm saying is this is where it's important, because somebody might turn around in a debate and turn around and say, yeah, but sea level rises are dropping in some places. Look in Alaska, and that might convince somebody this is not an issue. But whereas,
Well, that would be a terrible argument.
yeah, but that's goes back to the start of our discussion. Is we've got to sometimes look at the net impact. If for the majority of coasts this is an issue, then Alaska's irrelevant. It's just a one-off local issue. If the local issue exists for the majority of people, that's important. Whereas here, I think I've been fair with you, but that I think is cherry picking.
So I don't want to be unfair to you, but I think what's happened here is this is a factor you didn't know about.
Yeah,
10 minutes ago.
I didn't know
But
about
hold on
it.
a second. You've been talking to some of the leading climate scientists in the world, and you didn't know a basic fact about how sea level rise works.
Well, no. What I didn't know is, well, no. Look, if you think logically, we have mountains and we have, we have moving continents. I understand land moves. Okay. What I hadn't considered, hadn't been part of my thoughts is, oh yeah, but maybe on some coasts that the land is rising due to the land movement. But what that specifically also says is this is to do with the rate, the pace of change. Right now, the pace of change in sea levels is such that Alaska sea levels are falling. But like it says there, if we have this rapid increase in prices, in temperatures and a rapid melting of the ice caps, that may get outpaced.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I said. But I was trying to remember, we're talking about, you asked me how much I think about our environment. And part of it is I think about how the diversity of impacts. So I want to be aware of places where there are local factors that are a bigger deal in one direction or the other. And as I said, certain places will be hurt by the local factors and even more by the global factors, and you have to factor that in. But it's all I'm saying is it's wrong if you're having significant problems from local factors, which Miami is. It is wrong to fully attribute it to the global because you're going to make decisions.
And so the local factor for Miami, you said your point is that it's sinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I won't go into the exact things of Miami. There's just clear Miami is having much greater than average sea level rise challenges, which means that it's more, by definition, that it's more local than global. So I think Suarez is misled.
But what is that local issue? Is the local issue is that it's particularly flat, quite far in from the coast, or is it sinking? Like what is it?
But it can be a number of things. So I don't know the proportion, but so it can be building there sinks the land. It can be that there's like these giant kind of, as I said, like you can have these ocean masses that are slightly higher in some parts of the world over time.
Yeah.
So it can be that. So the thing to do in Miami is just to try to name those as exactly as possible and say, absolutely, here's the global sea level has increased by, let's say, the current rate is about a foot a century. So it hasn't quite increased a foot over the last century, but at its current rate it'd be a foot. And so to say, okay, here's what this is, here's what we expect. And then this is what gets into, as I said, if it was increasing by a foot a decade, 2 feet a decade, that would be really, really disruptive. But what I'm pointing out is that the extreme estimates, you're talking about 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet by the year 2100. What I'm saying is that's not alarmist. So this is why I'm
2 to 3 feet up to 7 feet, depending on your source, because a different source.
Okay, but my source is the UN IPCC, which is already extreme.